Hello, 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 and welcome to the Get Your Guide Coaching Podcast. I'm so excited to have our guest here. She is the Chief Empowerment Officer. I said, when I saw her, I was like, oh my God, she has to come on my podcast and let the girls know how to deal with all of the madness in corporate America and just in job stuff in the world. Beverly Dines, thank you so much for being here. How are
Thank
you
you
doing?
so much. I'm good. I said before we jumped on, I'm so jazzed to be here and thank you for sharing your platform with me. I'm so excited to talk to all the ladies listening, all the ways to empower themselves because people are playing in people's faces out here. And
Yeah.
I've been scaling in operations in many industries for over a decade. And one thing that is consistent is that now is our time to start creating our own doors and advocating for ourselves. Because if not us, then who? So I
That's
just love what
right.
you do, and I'm so excited to because we're getting real. We're
It's
gonna
going to be very real. This episode is going to be very real, which I love and I'm so excited about. But before we get into the realness, tell the people exactly a little bit about yourself and how you have this passion for helping, women, Black women navigate corporate America.
Yeah, so my name is Beverly. I am a chief operating officer. I got my start originally in higher education, and before that was really considering being a doctor. So when I tell you I know a pivot, I know a pivot quickly. As you know, it's since graduating graduate school, I went from higher education, retail ops, then to healthcare as a practice manager, then to tech, where I scaled to becoming a senior director of a really fast growing tech company here in Chicago, then pivot to being a senior leader in nonprofit arts. Now I'm a senior leader in creator econ and a creator as well. And I think for me, a through line that existed throughout my entire career were the reality of so much injustice that happens in the name of business, and
Mm,
in the name of best practices that
mm,
is inherited, antiquated practices that folks I genuinely believe don't know A are unethical, but B can be done differently. And I
yeah.
had made a commitment to myself as I was growing fast. And I do get in a position of power, God willing, that I would be able to then turn back around and educate people on the things that not only I've experienced, I've survived workplace bullying, I've survived all types of things in the business space in a variety of different industries that I would turn around and say, okay, now that I've gotten the insider view and I've been in some rooms and where that we would it would just curl your toes, like what people say behind closed doors about their
I'm
employees,
sure.
about their teams, and they assume because you're in the room that you are kikiing with them and you're hip to it. And I always remembered in the back of my mind, I said, I just when I become a C-suite, when I become a leader, I'm gonna come back around and tell folks they can advocate for themselves, that they can empower themselves because it is a game. I talk about it on my platform, how to play the corporate game, and nobody teaches you the rules. You can't play the game if you don't know the rules. And
I
so
love that. I
that's all
love
I
that
want
so
is to
much.
teach people how to play this game and win or get out and create your own damn doors because that's what they get to do. So why can't we do it?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the current state of affairs in corporate America, in the job market, especially for Black
Yes.
women right now. Like,
Yes.
obviously, we've seen so many different layoffs, right? In,
Hmm.
probably around 400,000, if not more, for Black women specifically, maybe close to 500,000.
Yes.
Talk to us about where we're at right now and why this is such a interesting time.
There's a couple of layers to this that I think is getting lost in the media that I think is important for folks to think about, especially if you're a Black woman listening to this. You are not new to the methods in which to sabotage career growth as a Black woman in corporate. There's a lot of sneaky behaviors that persist in corporate to prevent, especially strong-minded women, women who are able to pattern recognize and see, wait a second, the tea leaves are tea leaving, what's happening?
Right.
And so this mass layoff, you were absolutely right. We've eclipsed 450,000 Black women who have been laid off in 2025 alone. And by the end of 2025, since November 6th, we are going to have over 950,000 layoffs total. It is considered one of the largest layoff cycles in the last 36 years. And so when we think about that, right, there's a couple of layers beyond that. The first being
But
Um,
let me just, I think this is really important because you
yep.
said 950 and we're at 450 for Black women. So Black women are half of the layoffs.
Yes. Yes.
Important stat just to know. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, and layers to this, right? I think the
Huh?
first being there is an archetype of leader, an archetype of a person that is able to scale in business without necessarily, I like to say, like losing yourself in the process. And that's somebody who goes along to get along. And as we know about strong women, we're going to ask questions. We're going to I call it turning up a jaundiced eye. We're going to go, okay, wait, what's happening here, right? People don't like to be asked questions. And so when you are confident in yourself, when you know your skill set, when your expertise and you're growing quickly because you are innovative, that becomes a threat to folks who are non-creative, who are comfortable with the systems as they are, even if they aren't working. So if you're coming in and you're a problem solver, if you're somebody who is passionate about making spaces better than where you found them, you're already going to become a target because you're not going to be okay with the status quo. And so
Hmm.
a lot of the women, at least in my experience, who find themselves on the other end of this are folks who ask questions, are folks who are rising fast because other leaders are positioning them. They see, oh my gosh, this person's brilliant. Like let's keep them moving. But the other thing, and I call this the mamification of the workplace, is
Not the
when
corporate mammy girl.
there are so many cases. I've experienced this myself. I have other Black women in my community who have, we've talked about this, right? Where you're given that promotion or you're given that title, but you're also given three other jobs to go with that title. And
Hmm.
the moment you say, hey, I'm doing four people's jobs, and yes, it's great. You gave me the title raise. It's great. You gave me the. However, so and so over here is doing one person's job and making double what I am. I would just love to be getting, I'm happy to do, you are now a problem. I think a lot of women in the grander zeitgeist are having this conversation about the moment I started advocating or I experienced discrimination and harassment, contacted the EEOC or contacted HR. Suddenly I am on a performance improvement plan and I was getting gold stars up until I made this report. Those are a lot of the cases I'm seeing in my research and conversation with my community. And what that reinforces is two things. The first being that you are too big for spaces that are too small to hold you. I think too many Black women, especially, contort themselves. I know I'm guilty of this, of just making myself as palatable as possible to try to climb that ladder is rusted and has all kinds of rickety parts to go to it,
Right.
right? The rooms are too small for you. But the second thing is when you are retaliated against for self advocacy, what does that reinforce? That self advocacy is a problem. We're going to fire you. We're going to put you out on your butt if you fight for yourself. And for far too long, as Black women especially, have been reprimanded for speaking up about what they're seeing in the workplace. And if anything, we're seeing a vast resilience in Black women now starting their own businesses. I think I saw a statistic that stated that over 113,000 Black women have filed for LLCs in the last year. So people are saying, you know what? Well, if you guys aren't going to appreciate my brilliance, I'm going to go and do that for myself. But
Yeah.
that process comes with understanding that if you are still going to scale in corporate, how do you do so in a way that's authentic and that's healthy for you in systems that thrive with you bullying yourself, let alone them bullying you?
Thank you so much for just calling this out because everyone experiences this, but not a lot of people like actually are talking about it. And today I hope we can start to talk a little bit more about solutions. Everyone's like, yeah, well, you know how it is. Yes, but what can we do about it? So talk to me a little bit about how people can start to prepare for layoffs, like
Yes.
if that is to happen, because I know a lot of people think, "Oh my, no, Greg, I'm good. I'm good." But are they really good, girl?
See, the answer is unless you have strategic, and I just did a video on this about strategic allies in the workplace. If you are somebody who's like, no, I know I'm going to be a C-suite like you, Beverly, that is my goal. I'm going to be a leader who's going to be a change agent and all the things. Then, in order to play the game, you have to have strategic allies in the business that you are working with. And this is one of the number one things that I see folks in our community miss is it isn't enough to just be friends with the person that or be colleagues with the person that everybody loves. If that person isn't the ally number one, which is the connector, the person who is able to connect between executive leadership and folks on the ground, that is somebody that is a strategic ally to have because they're the ones who are going to be advocating for you or whispering in a positive way to leadership so that when the cuts are coming, and I've had this happen where I have saved employees where somebody said, Beverly, how, you've been on the ground, you're working with the team. How do you feel so and so's doing? I have been the person where they've been asking me and I've said, oh, no, they're doing great. Actually, here's what I've been seeing them do, da, 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 because they made that intentional effort to be in alignment with what I've got going on as the operator, and they've been spared from a layoff. So that's the first person to be allied with. The second
Can I
person,
stop you right there for a second?
of
Because
course.
so many people are saying, you know, just get in, get out, do your job and leave. And I think it's such a big mistake, especially as a dating
Yes.
and relationship coach, that like
Yes.
you, and especially as a Black woman, you actually are going to need other people to
Yes.
advocate for you. Your work product
Yep.
alone is not going to be enough in
Yes.
layoffs or in promotions as well.
Yes, I call them quiet allies. Like some of the best mentors I have ever had in my career have been white men. And they were CEOs or they had their own businesses who saw that I was playing the game and trying to play the game and took me quietly under their wing and said, "Hey Beverly, maybe do this next time." Or, "Hey Beverly, you're doing great, but maybe try this." And the thing about me, and I'm so grateful for to my parents, they said never be too big to ask for help, never be too grand to ask for
Yeah.
support, because when they'd say, "Hey Beverly, next time in the meeting do X," I was like, "Oh." But a lot of that was because I went out of my way to say, "Hey, I'd love to grab a coffee with you. I'd love to connect with you." And then paying attention to what they're not saying. What are they not saying about the type of culture they are emulating there? Which brings me to my second type of ally, which is the strategic leader on your team. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen people spared from the chopping block because they had created a strategic allyship with a leader on the team that advocated for them behind closed doors when their own manager wouldn't. When you are thinking about your own presence at your company, who are the people who are the connectors who you notice are regularly in and out of leadership's offices or sidebarring? If somebody says, "Oh, let's talk
Mhm.
offline," if you work virtually, who's that person that's regularly sidebarring with the leadership? Who was that strategic leader in your at your organization who you feel connected with, who you think you gel with? And if you don't know who that is, think about your own business function. If you work in sales, who is the VP of sales at your company? Reaching out to them for those initial coffee dates, especially internally, is going to yield you so many more positive returns, not only in protecting yourself, but also in expanding your network intentionally. Because these are the people who are the game changers behind closed doors that if you don't know how to activate them, when the time comes for those difficult decisions, they don't know you from anyone else. And the
Okay.
third
Connect
one
your
that I
ally.
always, yes, and the one I always give is as a bonus is, we often talk about culture carriers, right? But I want to emphasize that the way in which we think about culture carriers is what? Like the person who's the fun part, life of the party at the office.
Like the
They're the one.
personality hire almost.
Yes, the personality hire, 1,000%. However, the culture carrier at the organization that you should always be an ally with isn't always the personality hire. Actually, it's rarely the personality hire.
Who is it,
It is the
girl?
it is the person who is emulating the behaviors and energy that leadership continues to recognize. So, for example, if you have somebody on your team who recently was hired, maybe they brought on a new customer success manager or leader, and you continuously see leadership recognizing them, shouting them out in the community channels or during the all hands meeting. They're like, "We really just want to celebrate so and so for doing X." And you hear their name keep coming up about how well they're doing. That is somebody who leadership is indirectly communicating, is emulating the culture and behavior
Mhm.
that they want to see across the organization. Personality hire is great, but they can't save you. If you are
Right.
emulating the person who is driving traction towards what the business wants, that is what is going to ultimately align you with them saying, "Yep, they get it, they're on the boat." And that's how you want to be perceived by leadership if you're trying to scale in the corporate game.
Girl, this is good stuff.
You
I
see the
already know
games
the
though,
girls are
right?
gagging. I already know the
Right.
girls are gagging. I already know they're gagging, girl. I'm pretty
Yes.
sure most of them do not have these relationships. They're going in, they're clocking out, and they're not making these connections that could save your job,
Oh,
save your
yes.
livelihood, and also
Mhm.
set you up not just in this company, but for future companies and future
Yes.
jobs. So I'm so glad that you're speaking on this.
Hmm.
You talked about PIPs a little bit earlier. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I know some of the girls are on PIP plans right now. Most of them probably don't even deserve it. So can you talk a little bit about what employees need to know about PIPs and like what they should do if they're put on one?
Absolutely. So I want to start with what performance improvement plans are supposed to be. Performance improvement plans were supposed to be decades ago an opportunity to create transparent communication with a leader and their employee about what expectations need to be upheld so that they can maintain success in their role. It was always supposed to be a performance related positive growth forward thing. Unfortunately, far too many organizations and companies are weaponizing performance improvement plans
Yeah.
to A, get rid of problematic employees. Again, if you're speaking up about problems that you're seeing, if you report harassment or discrimination, suddenly you're on a PIP, even though you've been doing great work. They use it to weaponize against employees that they don't feel like coaching. There is a difference between a leader and a manager. Leaders will do what they can to coach you and educate you so that you can be successful. Managers who don't want to deal with that and they feel they can't micromanage you will pip you out so that they can just hire somebody else they feel they can control. And then the third reason is because they never set expectations for you to begin with. And so because they don't know what's left or right, they would rather penalize you for not doing what they feel you should be doing and knowing because you're psychic and everything else,
Right.
then take accountability and say, you know what, we didn't set you up for success to begin with. We didn't even give you an onboarding. Let's regroup and back up because you're a great employee, but we didn't make that clear. So if you are on a performance improvement plan, there are three critical things you need to do. The first thing is you need to ensure that in writing, they have documented the metrics that you are expected to reach because a lot of people do not put metrics down. They keep it general on purpose because then they can make up whatever reason they are terminating you for poor performance.
Mhm.
Ask them via email if they can provide you with clear metrics so that you can reach those. The second is make sure that there is an end date. A lot of companies will play in your face and give you performance improvement plans that are open ended, meaning that
Mhm.
there's no end date. A quality performance improvement plan that is meant to empower you will have it'll be 2 weeks, it'll be a quarter, it'll be a month. Make sure that there is an end date because if there isn't one, they're basically leaving it open ended as to when they can terminate you for whatever reason. And then the third thing to look out for is if they force you to sign it, because that's the other thing. They work with urgency, right? Well, we want to sign you, but do not sign anything that you feel is untrue. If they're telling you that you have not made certain metrics and you have documentation to support that you have not only done that, but you've excelled it, that this is coming out of nowhere, do not co sign their insanity. Do not do that. They're going
So
to
what
move
if they're
forward.
pressuring you, girl? Do you
Do
just say,
not
"Oh, let me
sign it
give me
because
some time," or like, what do
nope.
you say, girl? What do
I
you
have
do?
led HR departments, and I will tell you, I have gone to senior leaders and I said, "Hey, this employee is refusing to sign this either performance improvement plan or this whatever from another team." I'm like, I'm facilitating, and the leaders will say, "Well, it doesn't matter. That we're still going to move forward with it anyway. The business is still going to move forward with it anyway. But if you sign it, that means you agree."
Hmm.
So put in writing, hey, I just want to follow up that these are the expectations that were stated in the PIP that I'm not meeting. As of my previous one-on-one with my leader last week, they communicated that XYZ happened and that I also have been really crushing the metrics. Put in writing via email, always BCC your personal email and save those files. Here's the reality. If they terminate you for poor performance and it is after you have submitted a harassment to HR, a claim of discrimination to HR, if you have reported your leader for something that they did or whatever the case, that is retaliation. And it is not only illegal per the federal law of our country, and yes, still today, the EEOC is still active, but also if you are recognizing that you are being retaliated against, your game plan is not actually to win that PIP and to stay at that organization. Your game plan is two things. Collect all of the documentation you have that communicate that up until you submitted that report, everybody was fine. They were kikiing it with you at the happy hour. They were bringing you on to projects, all the emails, all the Slack messages, everything that you have, sending that to yourself in your email, saving hard copies so that you have that for future documentation so that you can communicate a pattern that emulates that before you submitted it. Here's all the data afterwards. I suddenly was put on a performance improvement plan. My boss, who never had a one on one with me, suddenly had a one on one every day and with HR on the call. I was excluded from certain events that I was previously included before. That pattern of retaliation is what's going to get you paid while they're trying to get you played.
Let's talk about that because I think the girls are missing the retaliation part
Yes.
of this whole entire experience. Can you talk about that retaliation play and how important that is?
Absolutely. I want to just preface by saying, because it's always important, I am not a lawyer. I am somebody who, so this is not legal
Correct.
advice. I will say though that in my experience and expertise, that what happens when you report something to, and it happens so frequently that the book is just played out at this point. So like really pay attention. When you are put on a PIP, the first thing that often people think of is like, crap, I'm about to lose my job. Like what's going on? And you lose sight of the fact, what preempted this? Because if I knew I was doing great, what happened here? And I want you to think, did I tell HR about an issue that I had going on here with an employee that's the office favorite or really tight with leadership?
Hmm.
Did I communicate to my leader directly about an issue I'm having with an employee who's also making out with the CEO? I don't know, right? But
Hmm.
go
Hmm.
back and think about what could have been the catalyst for it, because the moment that you can think back and say, oh, you know what? After I submitted this report to the EEOC about this person who was discriminating against me because of whatever the case, the reason why that is so important is because even if the EEOC denies your discrimination claim, if they're saying that they do not have enough evidence to support it, right? A retaliation claim is considered a completely separate claim per the federal government and state law. There are people who have lost federal cases but won state cases in the millions of dollars, right? Because of retaliation. Because so many companies tell on themselves because they're like, oh, you think you're going to play with us? We're going to get you fired. Wait a minute. And so far too often, folks will become discouraged because their discrimination case is not taken seriously or it isn't upheld. And then they get fired and they're like, oh, like now I'm starting back at square one. The story isn't over for you. If you can prove a pattern of retaliation, people are settling for quite handsome sums
Yes,
of money.
honey. Bills, not coins.
Bills, like undisclosed settlement.
Checks.
Because at the end of the day, you're working with people and people are often predictable. If they feel slighted,
Mhm.
if they feel like, oh, wait, because the EEOC has to notify your employer within 10 days of you submitting a complaint. They'll say somebody submitted a complaint. They won't go through the details because there's a due process and they have to meet with you first. But they still do notify the HR department, like, hey, a complaint's been filed. The
Yeah.
issue with that is that humans are humans and they're going to make their own assumptions. And if they're going to act like humans and be petty and retaliate against you, that this is your time to shine. I want you to have your armor ready to go. I want you to have your notepad ready. I want you to have your screenshots ready because people can't help themselves when they feel slighted. So those side comments, record your meetings, depending on if you're in a two-party consent state or one-party consent state. Of course, again, talk to legal advising during that process because your gut is honest. Your gut is telling you if you feel like you're being retaliated against, honey, you're being retaliated against. If you
Yeah.
feel like suddenly they're switching up, don't gaslight yourself because that makes them win. Believe yourself. They are retaliating against you. And I think so many Black women, especially, we dismiss our experiences because
Gaslight
we
ourselves.
gaslight ourselves. We don't want to be seen as the troublemakers. We're just trying to, succeed. No, no, no. Get comfortable with getting your coins. Okay?
Let's talk about the legal components of this, because I know that some of the girls out there might feel a little bit intimidated
Sure.
by getting a lawyer. You talked a lot
Yep.
about EEOC. If you can just also talk a little bit about that, because that's probably out of a lot of people's realm as well, especially
Yes.
here in the States. So can you talk a
So
little bit about what the components are and like if you feel like you need a lawyer, like what do we do?
yeah. So the first thing is documentation, documentation, documentation. I can't tell you how many folks have gone to the EEOC governing body that is put in place to protect employees, right? And I go through this in my bullying class that's on my website where I walk you through with templates exactly what to document because that is really important for you to win the day. Beyond that, there's a variety of factors because let's be real, Anwar, who wants to go through a lawsuit for several years? Like
Nobody.
most people don't want to do that.
Correct.
And so, if that is you, if you're listening to this and you're like, Beverly, I'm tired, there's a couple things that are important to note. One, if you are going to file with the EEOC, you do not have to take the issue to a trial. If they give you the right to sue, you don't have to do that. You can go to them and say, if you have a robust documentation, which is important, they will ask you, do you want to conduct a mediation or do you want to sue them? And a lot of people will have their lawyer. I always encourage you, again, this is not legal advice, so I'm encouraging you to, if you are able to acquire a lawyer, especially with your documentation, and say, I would like to mediate or a mediator, hire a mediator, come prepared with what that number is for mediation for you. And
But
and make sure
how are
that
we to know what that number is? Or how
so
do,
there's a
because here's the thing, right? You don't want to, just like in a negotiation, you don't want to lowball
yep,
yourself. But you want to maximize the amount of money. So how, like, is that something
absolutely.
that you would talk about with your lawyer or?
Absolutely. There's a couple of things to think about, right? If you've had to start going to therapy because of the situation you're experiencing in work. I want you to think about that maximum for even if you're getting insurance, right? I want you to think about how much does that cost ultimately adding up for you having to get mental health support. If you've had to miss work or you've had to take time off that you didn't have to, but they didn't accommodate the pay, especially if you're a 1099 contractor, there's all kinds of hinky things, and which is why getting a lawyer is important. But think about the rough costs of you just having to navigate that situation because your mental health is critical, your physical health is critical. I have people who have worked with me who have been hospitalized for panic attacks and other things. That's a hospital bill, that's real money. And if you can prove with your pattern of evidence that that is directly related from the retaliation or harms that have been caused by work, that can also fold into it. A lawyer will help be able to help guide you on best practices when it relates to that finite number. But like, start looking at those receipts. But if you look up and you have 6 months left of the year and you're like, you know what, I want my salary for the year for that 6 month period and that I've experienced this trauma, plus my doctor's visits and copays and all of that. What is that number? And then talk with your lawyer and see if that is a good starting place because a lot of companies would rather settle with you. Don't want to be drugged through a lawsuit either,
Right. Yeah.
especially if the EEOC gives you a right to sue letter, because that means that they have found validation through your robust documentation that you've got a case.
Now, for the girls out there, what does EEOC stand for?
The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is what the EEOC stands for. They're a federal entity that reviews cases of discrimination on the basis of protected classes. So if you feel like you're experiencing ageism, if you feel like you're experiencing discrimination based off of your religion, based off of your race, based off of your sexual identity, these are things that are protected by the EEOC. And some of the examples of that, right, are if you are told in a meeting, like, oh, you're too young, what would you know about this? I'm going to have these team members come over here and help you. That's discrimination. Paying attention to those protected classes. And you can go to the EEOC website and look through what they classify. I also teach this in my class on what they consider harassment, sexual harassment. If they constantly make comments about your body or things like that that make you uncomfortable, those types of things. Again, it goes back to patterns. But then beyond that, there are certain parameters where you have to file with the EEOC in certain states within 300 days from the latest incident, and in other states within 180 days. So this is not something to wait on either. I think for a lot of us, we get in our heads and we think, oh, well, pros and cons, pros and cons. If you know in your gut you are experiencing harm, do not wait, because once those statute of limitations are up, it becomes extremely hard to be able to get that advocacy, especially from lawyers.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. This is so important. You were talking about a bullying class that you have. Can you share with us some of the intimidation tactics and maybe some of the bullying that we see? I mean, I think a lot of us have probably experienced it, but I do think it's helpful to understand because some people might not even think about certain things as intimidation or bullying, but it really is.
Yes. So, one element that my community has recently brought to my attention, which is just, it devastates me. So, if you're experiencing this, you are seen, you are not alone, is the rise of workplace mobbing. And
Yeah.
it's gang mentality. There's no other way to say it, where people are mobbing one employee, and ganging up on them and an active aggressive group think and group tackling in the workplace. And there's a lot of sneaky ways that mobbing comes to be. Again, exclusion is a big way that people do this. There's always a mob leader. This person is typically threatened by you. So if you are being mobbed at work and you're thinking like, why is this happening to me? Who is somebody who you can tell is threatened by your success, or hasn't been liking the fact that you've been recognized recently by your team, by your leaders, or who was previously the golden star of the team, and then you came on and started having your wins because you are fabulous and will be doing so, and now you're a problem. So pay attention to those folks, because a lot of times they're the leaders of those groups. And I think a lot of times we gaslight ourselves too, because it's like, well, maybe, maybe everybody's experienced this or this or that. But another way that bullying can manifest is if a leader is in on it. So then you go to your leader and you say, hey, I'm experiencing this. Have you noticed this? And they'll go, you're the only person who's brought this issue to me. Or you're the only person everybody else seems to be having a great time here. Everyone else is I mean, why can't you just get on the board, like get on board? Why can't you just get on team? Though that is a form of isolative behavior. And it's done on purpose so that you do feel alone. And like if you were to advocate that you'd be alone, but I guarantee you that if you brought it up, somebody else has as well. That's just how these bullies win. Another way that bullying is continuing to rise, especially in this context, is with HR themselves. And I cannot express enough how there are so many members of my, I mean, in the thousands of comments, Anwar, of community members who've said they have gone to HR and they say, well, what do I do if HR is my bullies? What
Mm,
if I do if the HR protects the company? So where do I go then? If like I'm struggling and they're the ones who are weaponizing process from me, or you report something and they say it's handled and nothing gets handled and now you're being retaliated against.
mm,
And so when you are in a situation that you are feeling you are being bullied in, the first thing is you need to validate what you're experiencing. As somebody
yeah.
who has experienced workplace bullying, I try to overcompensate by thinking I could win them. I'm like, if I can maybe
Mm,
win there, like if I can, maybe I'll do some more. Because I was a leader who was being bullied by my staff. This has
mm,
happened twice in my career,
wow.
where because I was one of the leaders who was upholding this was when I worked in healthcare, when I was upholding policy and trying to treat people equitably. There was two other leaders on our team who were the cool leaders, and they were the ones who were kind of telling folks they're down with the team. So then it undermined someone like me because I'm trying my best to uphold policy, but if they're letting folks, you know, get away with stuff, then I'm a jerk. Like I'm not
Yeah.
the fun, I'm the fun police, right? So
Right,
what I
right.
did is I was like, oh shoot, like okay, let me start. I started paying out of pocket for stuff and I'm like, let me do like community events and let me do some potlucks and let me do this. Like I'm trying to win these bullies, and it actually made the bullying freaking worse because they knew that I was trying to win their approval.
I love that you said that. I think it's a natural reaction, but I think it's even more prevalent for us people of color
Yes.
just because so many messages are
Yes.
around a sense of or lack of belonging, and so oftentimes
Yes.
we will overcompensate to try to even just belong when we just actually just need to be. Yeah. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're pointing that out. It's so important.
Mhm.
You shared a little bit of your story. I will share mine because I think it's important that everybody realizes that. I think everybody experiences this, especially if you are of color. I had just gotten out of business school. I was working at a fashion company, and my boss was this narcissistic Italian woman, and I didn't know what to do. But you know, the woman that saved me was this black
Mm,
admin, the COO's admin, who took me to the side and said, I see what's going on here.
mm.
Here's what you can do. And she said,
Yeah.
you need to go on short-term disability and you need to leave this company. And I would have never known. I was trying to power through. I was trying to overcompensate and win someone over who had already told me that I don't like you.
Yep.
I'm never gonna like you, right? And whatever you do, I'm still not gonna like you. And
Mhm.
instead, I got my mental health back while being on short-term disability. She was even like, here are some doctors I can help figure out how to get a doctor's note to make sure that, right, really to try to help my health. And so I share this so that I want everyone out there to know that you have options. You're
Mhm.
not stuck. You're not powerless, right? I think so for so many of us, control is so important and so big, but
Mhm.
sometimes you also have to know that this is like you can control yourself and your health and what you can do, but you probably aren't going to be able to change or control the organization or the people in the organization. And so I just wanted
Yeah.
to share my experience too, since you shared yours and you were vulnerable in doing that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciate you sharing about short-term disability because if y'all don't take this FMLA, if y'all don't take
Girl,
this short-term disability, there, when I tell take the, that
honey,
is what it's
honey,
there
the white
for
girls do it all the time. No shade.
all the time,
The white girls
all
do
of
it
the
all the
time.
time.
Take the disability. If your company offers FMLA, even if they offer short, take it and use that as your padding to leave and go into that next opportunity because that gives you months of time where you're not dealing with their nonsense and their craziness, where you can focus on that next move. Because I will say a common form of retaliation that I have clients who have worked with me
Post.
is when you come back from FMLA,
Post.
they're
That's
pissed
exactly.
because
That's
they
it.
know they've been giving you four people's jobs and now they got to do them. So they're
Mm-hmm.
mad at you and they're thinking they're plotting on you the entire time while you're on FMLA. You come back, people are like, wait, what happened? Why am I being fired? Because they've been pissed the whole time. They got to do their jobs. You were doing their jobs and then you left and self advocated. So when you do that, make sure a part of your wellness and health plan is that if I come back from FMLA, I'm going to be handing in my 2 week notice that day or my 1 day notice.
Correct.
That is my
Correct.
plan.
Correct. Honey, I call MFLA
Yeah.
motherfucking leave the assholes.
Goodbye. Adios.
I love it.
I think there's such a power in, especially now that more and more people are talking about the preservation of mental health and
Yes.
support in because there is something that happens to us. You mentioned belonging. As somebody who's a survivor of egregious bullying from the ages of 5 to 15, um, it's there is something that happens to you when you just want to clock in, clock out, get your check. Like most of us just want to work. We just leave us alone. But even beyond that, when you see the togetherness that's happening, I think there's a piece of all of us who sees
Correct.
that and wants to feel like they're a part of the group, especially when you're working hard, especially when you're drilling down often more times than the people who are kikiing it
Yep.
at lunch. You want to feel to be a part of that, and then you couple that with the you mentioned having a narcissist for a leader, right? People don't talk about if you are a survivor of abuse, if you're a survivor of partner-based harm, those people work. Those people have jobs. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to stay vigilant to what are the patterns that I am noticing in myself that I may be susceptible to because I am working with a narcissist, because I'm working with somebody who, and you always want to be cognizant too that you're not diagnosing folks, unnecessarily, but a lot of folks who are, if you've experienced it, you know what you're looking at when you're seeing it. And I have worked with leaders where I'm like, wait, I feel like I'm in an abuse cycle right now. Like I literally, it's the rewards and then the isolation and then the retaliation and then the rewards again. And you're going through this cycle where you're like, and I will tell you, one of my leaders who I had advocated for months and months. This was at the same place where I was being bullied by my team, and I'm telling her, I'm showing her pictures of what they're putting on the whiteboard and to bully me and other leaders, and I'm saying, hey, I'm not happy. Like I'm not being treated well. What are you and the team gonna do? And she's like, well, we're going to talk to them and we're going to figure out who did it. And we're going to figure out. And I'm like, no one's going to come forward and say that they are writing harmful things on the whiteboard about me. No, we're going to talk to them and we're going to figure it out. And they had this whole conversation. I said, no, what you need to do is you need to go in front of the team because every Friday we would have a team meeting. And I said, and you need to take a stand and say, we have a zero tolerance for bullying here. Because if it's not coming from leadership, people are going to think it's okay. And she's like, no, because then it's going to make things uncomfortable. And we're going to. And so she has this conversation with the team. And of course, nobody comes forward and says that we're bullying Beverly. They just, they're like giggling and stuff in the thing. Fast forward to me quitting and turning in my 2 weeks notice about maybe 3 weeks later, burst into tears, the white woman tears, right? Sobbing. How can you do this to me? You're my person. What are you doing? I literally felt like I was being broken up with,
Mm-hmm.
or that I was in a breakup, that I had broken up with
Right.
them. I was like, and then she had to pull herself together, and it's not to, but it was like I've been communicating my abuse by this team for months, and now I
Mm.
advocate for myself. How can you do this to me? Is literally
Right.
what's, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So if you recognize these patterns in the workplace, you must validate what you're experiencing, because the moment you acknowledge, you know what, yeah, there's something about this that isn't safe for me, it recontextualizes how you're going to move and self-preserve, because some people are comfortable in chaos, but that does not mean you have to be.
I know that's right.
Hmm.
We're at the end of the year, right? I know that there's probably a lot of performance reviews and holidays and even some career transitions. What should specifically women of color be focusing on during this time and positioning themselves for 2026 and a successful one at that?
1,000%. So before you have any performance review cycle, whether it's the end of this year or the end of the next fiscal year, which is like May, June, when they do those reviews, start now compiling your impact metrics. I have a class where I teach how to track your own metrics, because oftentimes when you are in a performance review, you are in a reactionary capacity. Your
Mm,
leadership is telling you what they've observed of you and then assessing based off of that observance. But the issue with that is that humans have recency bias. So they're
right,
not remembering your wins from 6 months ago, 7 months ago. They're remembering a mistake you made a month ago that was an anomaly out of all the excellence you've had over the past year. And they're using that to give you meets expectations,
right.
even though you've been exceeding expectations for a year. So what you can do is start tracking your quantitative metrics. These are the numbers, right? So if you have a metric they've given you, let's say they expect you to have to triage 400 client calls a month. And let's say that's what a metric for you. I want you to go back and look month over month, how many client calls did I achieve? Did I surpass that metric? Did I go under it? What did that look like? Quantitative metrics can also look like how many tickets did you process? If you're an engineer, if you're somebody who works on projects, the project based things, how many projects did I complete each month or whatever that cycle is? The numerics around your metrics. And then when you find those quantitative metrics, put descriptors next to those about the case, what you did, what you led, what the end result was, so that you can properly communicate, hey, here's how I've been meeting these metrics each time. Qualitative metrics are the wins that are not quantifiable, but should still count, that are often overlooked. This is where maybe you saved a client from churning. Maybe you work in client success. You saved a client from churning because you saw an email that they were kind of hinting that they weren't quite happy with the platform. And because you jumped into action to jump on a call with them, they actually didn't churn. That isn't a number, but that is still absolutely a metric where you stopped a churn from happening. So look up your qualitative metrics and document those in an Excel sheet. And I even have templates on my website for you as well. And in that, when you come into that meeting, the last thing I want you to have prepared in that metric sheet are I call them wins, and I call them losses, meaning like where you've made a mistake. Because a lot of times where leaders will get sneaky is they will zero in on a mistake you made and use that as the foundation for your entire review. But you're going to get ahead of them. And what you're going to do is you're going to look back at that mistake. You're going to go, okay, what happened here? You're going to identify it. What was the root cause of the issue? What did I do to resolve it? And what systems did I put in place so that this issue never happens again? So when you step into that meeting for your performance review, whether it's the end of this year or next fiscal cycle, you can sit there confidently and have data-driven rebuttals to anything that they say to you about your performance. So if they say, well, we really think you meet expectations when it relates to culture, we wish we could have seen you more at such and such and such. You can go back to your data that you've now compiled, because you've heard us here on with Anwar. Listen, you've been listening, you heard us, where you can go, well, wait a second. Over the past 7 months, I've been at 4 different ERG meetings. I went to 6 different events. I went to the happy hours, I went to this and this and this. So can you help me understand this? This goes back to the negotiation. Can you help me understand how this meets expectations as opposed to exceeds, and what metrics you would like to see more of? They're not going to expect you to have that data, because most people don't come to the table. As somebody has been doing this for 10 years, most people sit there and wait for us to tell them. You're not going to do that though. And if they tell you that oh, that's great, but we're not going to budge on it, blah, 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 you now know that this is not a place that is invested in your growth. So immediately, while over the holidays, while you are hanging out with family and friends and enjoying the Jubilee, I want you to focus on that next pathway of, okay, where am I going to my next promotion? Because don't let your job stop you from finding your promotion. And
I
that
know
is going to
that's
be your
right.
opportunity.
I know that's right. I'm so glad that you said that. If y'all not happy, look for other opportunities.
Ooh, quickly, because I
Some
will tell
people
you one
are
of
like
the
really trying to make fetch happen, and it's
Yeah.
not gonna
Ooh, it's not
happen.
gonna happen. Yes, I
Yeah.
will tell you one of the best pieces of advice I have ever received was from my white man who was a senior leader. I was in graduate school. When we were talking about our career goals, I said, I want to be a COO by the time I'm 30. He goes, oof, okay, that is a really aggressive goal, but I think you can do it but if you do anything else, in order to grow up, you need to grow out. He
Mm,
said, we all do it. If you want to grow up, you need to grow out. So he said that's why most CEOs, especially in larger organizations, their average tenure is 18 months. Especially in startup environments, because the understanding is that after a certain period, you cap your growth potential at an organization. Do not let these people lie to you unless they are showing you in action where they are putting you on promotion tracks and then honoring them every year. They will try to keep you there because they understand the longer you are there, the less likely you are to leave. And there are some studies that support that every time you leave an organization, you can increase your salary by upwards of 30 to sometimes 60%, and your title every time, and grow exponentially faster than you would ever internally.
yeah.
So ever since hearing him give that advice, I would give companies opportunities to show me. Don't listen to what they're saying. Show and don't listen to the market. Also, there's a lot of negativity and fear mongering that's happening in our world right now about the hiring market. There are people in my community every day who are commenting saying that they are getting jobs today, right now. So do not listen to the fear mongering that is creating what folks are calling job huggers. where you're
Mm,
holding on to this job that's toxic and not caring for you because you're scared, that is exactly what they want. They're benefiting from that narrative. Instead, take your data, take your metrics, get yourself that new title and that new coin because it's out there and it's waiting for you.
right. I love all of this. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. How can the girls get in contact with you? Because
Absolutely.
I think a lot of them need to be in contact with you and be working with you to make sure that this transition that they need to do, whether it's staying within the organization
Yep.
or leaving, is as smooth and as efficient as possible. So how can they get in contact with
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is beverlydines.com. I have three tracks. If you're looking for a role right now, I have one-on-one opportunities there for you to help you get. I call them my hiring market hack pack. Like we will, from an executive standpoint, I will help you get a job ASAP, Rocky. And then the second track is if you are in job transition and you're looking to elevate in your career, I have two packages where you can meet with me to create to play the corporate game or create your own doors, which is my book and the framework around starting your own business. If you're trying to become an entrepreneur but you don't know where to start, I am the first major entrepreneur in my family, so I empathize with like where do I even begin? I
Yeah.
can work with you there, but no matter what, if you go on my website and scroll all the way down, you can book an intro call with me and we can figure out and customize an opportunity that works for you, and you will be surprised. I have very accessible plans because I don't want money to get in the way of you getting to your passions. I have payment plans and
100%.
everything in between. Do not let that stop you from jumping into your purpose because it is there for you even if you don't feel that way now. So beverlydines.com is where you'll find all of those resources. I'm Beverly Dines on Instagram, on TikTok, and everywhere where I am, like you said, I am a chief empowerment officer for you because everybody needs to be empowered right now. And that includes these incredibly brilliant women who are listening to this podcast right now who know something's up and they're going to figure out where to go because
Yes.
this is not happening the way it needs to be happening for them.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I
Mhm.
just want to say for the ladies that are listening, why are we talking about this right now? And there's so many, if this happens, do that and do this and do that. Because this is dating. You're dating your company.
Yes.
And the same things that you are doing corporately is
Yes.
exactly what you're going to do in dating and relationships. And just like Beverly is your chief empowerment officer, I'm your dating empowerment officer. And I want
Period.
you to know and to understand that you have much more control and power than you ever thought. You just need to have the knowledge and the game to actually execute it. So that's the intention of this episode. I hope that you learned something in this episode and take it with you. Work with Beverly to make sure that you're doing it in a way that works well for you. And again, I hope that you take this information and make sure that you're safe professionally and
Yes.
personally. All right.
Yes.
Now, with that said, Beverly, thank you so much for being here. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
so much. I'm going to bring you back because I want you to teach the girls how to play the game. I'll probably bring you back next year, girl, because we
Oh,
got to
yes.
learn how to play the game. Okay?
Because it is one.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring you back, girl.
Yes.
And please find us on socials and tag us and let us know exactly what were your biggest takeaways from this episode. With that said, I'll see you on the flip side, ladies. Bye bye.